Hello everyone, Raiden 3 is a shoot 'em up now available for the Nintendo Switch. This game is a remake of the same game that was released in 2005. So we're talking about something that has been around for quite a while, but in this version there are a couple of new things that are worth discussing. Raiden 3 is available in Nintendo's eShop for $30, and in this video I discuss basic aspects of the game and whether it's worth buying. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, I review new games every week. Let's start by discussing the game's form and purpose. Actually, you could say that there are two goals with the game. First, make your way through 7 levels, shoot down everything that moves and take on the game's bosses. Second, to top the high score list. Each stage is relatively short. If you have a perfect round, it should be possible to finish within the hour. The environments you fly in are varied, not entirely unexpectedly. Missions will be carried out in space, but at the beginning of the game you are on the planet itself, flying through cities and coastal environments. In other words, the visual offers some surprises and unpredictability. It's actually quite an exciting element, not knowing what awaits one next. When it comes to the mechanics of the spaceship, you have access to a few different weapons. For one, there is a spreader that can be extremely effective against enemies coming from different directions. Then there is a blue laser that I personally found relatively difficult to handle. It is certainly a strong weapon, but has a limited range. It is especially noticeable when confronting enemies from the side. They can then operate undisturbed, and you must instead focus on your movement pattern rather than attacking. The third weapon is a green laser and somewhat resembles the blue one. Although this weapon is much more effective because you can swipe it across the screen. I would also like to add that the weapons are upgradable, which is a big help. Just look at the spreader, it is hugely effective as it covers a large area of the game screen. You can also use missiles, which is very helpful as they can be homing. The last weapons you have access to is a bomb, which basically destroys most enemies on the screen. You only have access to a select few, so it can be an advantage to save it for important situations. But to summarize the range of weapons, it's quite limited. There is not much to choose from, but from what you have access to, they are quite varied, which could possibly mean that the player can find their own favorite weapon. Something I find problematic is the speed of the spaceship. It moves fairly smoothly vertically, but horizontally is a different story. I don't know how many times I've crashed depending on how slowly you move sideways, and depending on the degree of difficulty you choose, it becomes a factor to be reckoned with. The higher the difficulty, the faster is the enemy's bullets, so if the enemy fires a barrage of bullets at a rapid pace, then you have to be extremely concentrated not to explode, so much depending on the spaceship's low speed. I actually don't know if it's possible to find an upgrade that makes the spaceship fly faster. From my experience, there is no such feature in the game. But the game is filled with other features that make the experience quite dynamic. In addition to the 7 different degrees of difficulty, you can also adjust the number of bombs, how many lives you have access to, and whether you should be able to collide with objects. In addition, you can set which mode you want to play in. If you play handheld, you can flip the console and experience the game vertically. It's pretty standard these days, but the feature is also in this game. Of course, you can play 2 players at the same time, which encourages couch co-op. You can also unlock a gallery, where different images from the game become available. In addition, you can listen to all the music again, which can be worth it. The composers have written some pieces that are really worth listening to, which at least put me in a good mood. Raiden 3 is a shoot 'em up that is a modern take on a classic game. I think that people interested in the genre can find joy in this, above all depending on the different degrees of difficulty, which can really be adapted to the player's own skills. Also, the new features can be engaging, especially all the music, which I think is one of the game's great assets. It's also a fairly compact game. Stages are short, but packed with enemies. so it never gets boring. But it also feels like this is an exclusive edition of something that isn't really that new. It's a shoot 'em up that doesn't really feel that surprising. Of course, the different environments you fly in are varied, which makes the experience feel fresh in a way. But at the same time, the gameplay is relatively expected. You move vertically, shoot down all enemies on the screen, dodge bullets, and eliminate the game's bosses. It can actually be entertaining, but at the same time not very innovative. But I also want to mention that there is a world ranking system, so for those of you who love to collect points, this is definitely worth checking out. Raiden 3 costs $30 in Nintendo's eShop. Well, it's a solid shmup with a lot of features, so maybe the price is right. This is definitely worth more than a $10 game, and at the same time it's not a $60 game either, it's somewhere in between. So $30 feels reasonable. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, I review new games every week. Have a good day, see ya!